But even though I have been, talking about this, the emotion regulation part for forever, it really seems to continue to land on deaf ears that childbirth education is evolving when it comes to information, but not in how we're presenting the information and the skills that we're helping parents develop. So some of you know me from, well, know me for a couple of years, or I've been banging on about this now for many, many years, that information transfer, knowledge transfer just isn't enough for parents these days. So just a quick look at, this is gonna be a kind of a whistle stop tour. So we're gonna look at the evolution of childbirth education. Has it evolved? And if so, in what ways? And then the issue that many of us have heard in the past, and hopefully for those of you who are out working with gentle birth couples, you're not seeing this too much anymore. That saying of everything went out the window when, whether that was labor started or when we got to the hospital or when something else happened. Their plans were significantly changed, or their focus, or something else that was happening during that labor. We'll take a quick look at what stress does to the brain in pregnancy, labor, and postpartum, and how it affects our decision making. So, many of us on this group will know about the framework, the brain framework. But the brain framework is great for accessing information and knowledge. But what happens is when we don't have a brain that is calm enough to come back online, we don't have access to so much of that knowledge and all of those great classes that we may have taken. So we're going to define what is emotional regulation. How does that differ from relaxation techniques? What is at stake in pregnancy, labor, and postpartum for mom? What is at stake for her baby? And what is at stake for her relationship with her partner, even in postpartum? And we'll have a quick look at the evidence as well. So, has childbirth education evolved? It has in certain ways. Yes, we have so much more content available to us. We see classes that spend quite a bit of time on the microbiome, on self-advocacy, understanding birth rights, understanding the evidence. So there's no shortage of information. Now, maybe a little bit of a shortage of time when you're trying to get all that information into the parents' brains. So like these intensive classes that are, run for 8 hours, that include postpartum as well. I think parents need a little bit more help than just an avalanche of information. We definitely have more tools, more techniques. We've got the birth ball, we've got TENS machines, we've got the birth sling, we have Rebozo. So, and not to say that some of these tools are not, these have existed in other cultures, but have been recently adopted into kind of American culture and European culture as a tool for birth. So childbirth education has definitely evolved in some ways, but it has evolved in content, and it has evolved and changed in structure. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, all of this extra information actually improving birth outcomes? Is it making a difference? And for anyone who's on the call here who is out working, in the hospitals on a regular basis, you might think that it's probably not. You're not seeing huge changes, especially if you've been at the birth of work for a while and you've seen these changes come in where we have these, additional tools, additional information, but excuse me, is it really making a difference? Because of that one sentence, excuse me, we keep hearing, well, actually, I don't hear this very much anymore. Once and that fill in the blank, then everything just went out the window. And that is a huge part of the fight or flight response. So, well, fight, flight, and freeze response. So, what is happening when we're in that response, that panicked response? It could be at the beginning of labor, it could be at the end of labor, but that stress response where the emotional brain really just takes over. So what is happening when we look at what's happening with unmanaged stress or unmanaged fear in labor? And this is just not just even about labor. This is if we have unmanaged stress throughout pregnancy. So we'll just start at the top, which is because we're kind of focused on brain training for birth. When that fight or flight response takes over, the amygdala, that emotional functioning parts of the mammalian brain, they just run the show. So our executive functioning is offline, our decision making. We don't have access to all of that brilliant content that we learned in the classes. So that's the first problem. We don't have access to it unless we can bring that executive functioning literally back online. So, what's happening in the body in that stress response? We have impaired decision making, we have the hormone disruption, we've got changes to pain perception. Our thinking becomes quite distorted. We lose our kind of nuanced thinking. Everything becomes very black and white. We have adrenaline flooding the body. Then we have the physiological response of the heart rate, respiration, blood pressure. We've got glucose being dumped out into the body because the body is preparing for a perceived threat. We also have change to the baby's heart rate, muscles tense, digestion slows down, the immune system is suppressed. So this is not a great experience for mom. Blood flow redirected from the uterus and baby. This is not a good experience for baby either. So when we look at the brain, we have impaired decision making, an increase in anxiety, and in some cases aggression. But I tend to see this more with the male birth partner. The amygdala turns off that rational decision making brain. So it's like, and why does this happen? So it's fear-based. We're in a situation where a woman is experiencing, especially on a first labor, unfamiliar sensations and often pain. On moving into the hospital, then we are in an unfamiliar environment, and this woman feeling very vulnerable. So her brain is thinking, okay, so we are in labor, we need to get to a safe place. But if you think where oxytocin can be free flowing, but taking a mom and putting her into a busy, unfamiliar, light-filled environment is similar to trying to give birth in a train station. Strangers, lights, noise. This is not a safe place for the brain, for the body. So we're going to put the brakes on everything. So this high stress then is associated with the shutdown of our executive functioning. So as I say here, it's like the CEO of your brain just goes off on a break. That prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain that's associated with logic, with rational, with helping you make those, informed decisions and memory, they just are not available to us anymore. So this is not, again, when we talk about this is not rocket science. It is brain science. It is a little bit of brain science. So we do need to just understand a little bit of the basics. But a lack of skills to emotionally regulate ourselves during stressful events is going to lead to this problem of the brain freezing, of us not being able to access information. We cannot make informed decisions. And it's likely to have a knock-on effect on the rest of our labor. But what is emotional regulation? So it's often defined as the ability to manage our internal emotional state, especially in stressful conditions, so that we can think clearly, stay grounded, and respond from a place of calmness, a place of intention, rather than from a place of chaos or fear or overwhelm, because we tend not to make great decisions when we are coming from a place of panic or stress. So emotional regulation does not mean we're not feeling things. So it just means that, as you know, we all talk about the sensations of labor, and that we're learning how to surf those waves. So likely we're also learning how to ride those waves of emotion without getting overwhelmed, without getting hijacked by them and getting swept away. So in labor, it's the difference between freezing and then catastrophizing. And catastrophizing, it's kind of a normal function of the brain to focus on worst case scenario. So that's why our brain goes to worst case scenario, because it is a protective mechanism. So if you were hunting years ago, 100,000 years ago, out in the plains, and you heard a rustling in the bushes, it is it is better for the brain to assume that is a tiger in the bushes than a hamster. Because if we were to flip it the other way, and our brain assumed everything in the world is safe and good, then we would assume, if that was in fact we assumed it was a hamster, not a tiger, then we are about to become dinner for that tiger. So it is a mechanism that developed to protect us. But when we freeze and catastrophize, the brain automatically will go to worst case scenario. And it does it during pregnancy as well. It is part of that negativity bias that you'll learn about in our instructor training. So it is a difference between being able to stay calm, to be able to access that neocortex again, and making confident decisions that align with your goals. So emotional regulation is the ability to manage our internal state, thinking clearly, staying grounded rather than reacting from a place of fear or overwhelm. But this is not something that's traditionally taught in classes. We're usually taught relaxation techniques. So, what is the difference between relaxation and emotional regulation? Excuse me. So relaxation is about the body. Yes, it will calm the nervous system. It slows the heart rate and breathing and releases physical tension. So it is absolutely useful during labor. It is incredibly useful for managing pain and helping ourselves stay physically calm, because there is a two-way communication between the brain and body. But emotional regulation is about the mind. It helps manage thoughts and feelings about what's happening. And it supports flexibility and resilience under pressure. So it helps parents to stop spiraling into fear, panic, and self-doubt. And being, especially for, again, if a parent has any difficult changes that they have to navigate to their birth preferences, and that ability to make good decisions that support their goals and plans, and being able to stay present. But breathing is also a way that we can, it's a relaxation technique, but it's also a way to emotionally regulate ourselves, but only if it's practiced with awareness. So yes, slow breathing that a lot of women will learn in their classes can relax the body. We're tricking the body into that physiological relaxation response. But how that woman interprets that experience, that's part of the whole emotional regulation. And just quickly, understanding a little bit about mindfulness and compassion skills. So mindfulness is not a relaxation skill. One of the side effects to mindful meditation is that the body is in a little more relaxed state, and you're physiologically, we're seeing a more of a relaxation response. But it's not about zoning out or escaping, or imagining yourself on a nice beach somewhere. It's about tuning into your sensations, into the feelings, and noticing the thoughts. And this is why it's helpful when parents start to practice this approach of emotional regulation in pregnancy. They get to practice with little things. So they start to notice their thoughts. Notice where does your thought and your mind take you to when you're not watching. And oftentimes it takes us on a train of thought that is taking us to stress town, and not to a nice sunny beach somewhere. And then we look at compassion practices. So compassion practices are so, so important, especially when we look at women who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, from women who are experiencing birth trauma. It is about bringing kindness to hard moments. And yes, we're in antenatal classes, we talk about, yeah, we have to be nice to ourselves, be gentle with ourselves. But that is just word salad. If we're not going to help parents develop the skills, there is a skill of compassion training. There's a way to, and it's we all would identify as being compassionate people, but there's actually practices that we can do that will, bring our compassion really for ourselves to the forefront, and compassion to others, because we have no problem with being kind to our newborn baby and offering our babies compassion. But in our kind of modern life, it is often very difficult for women to offer ourselves that same gentleness and that same compassion and that same kindness that we offer to our new babies. So having compassion practices is so helpful for emotional wellness and for that kindness, especially coming into postpartum when we have a different relationship now with our body, maybe a different relationship even with our partner. So learning compassion practices can really make that transition a lot smoother. So when we combine compassion practices and mindfulness practices, it helps us stay present. It helps us reduce judgment. So we have, especially if plans have changed and maybe mom was hoping that she wouldn't have an epidural on that day, and things have changed. So how can we help parents accept these changes with courage and with compassion for themselves, so they're not bringing guilt into parenthood? It is just such a wasted emotion in the postpartum time. So again, it's not about imagining being on a calm beach somewhere. It's about that finding that calm within the middle of that storm, for moms and for partners as well. So so what is at stake? So I just did kind of a quick run through some of the research, and I'm happy to share these slides if anyone would like them for to kind of to look over later. But so when we look at what is at stake for moms, partners, and actually baby as well, when parents don't have the skills for emotion regulation. So one of the first ones is the loss of perceived control. When parents enter that fight or flight or freeze, they often feel disempowered, even if things look like they're normal on paper. So that perceived lack of control is one of the strongest predictors of birth trauma, even in what we might consider to be a straightforward, normal birth without complications. We're likely to see increased interventions. We have stress and fear is also associated with longer labors, more interventions, high maternal anxiety being linked to longer labors, as I already mentioned. So likely to use more epidurals, higher rates of operative births then coming from the increase in epidurals. As I already mentioned, the reduced decision-making capacity. So in that heightened stress state, the prefrontal cortex, which we are relying on to help us access all of that information that we've learned in all those great classes, we have not got access to that. It is offline. In part on the baby. So we know that the baby doesn't just experience birth physically. Their neurodevelopment is influenced by how the parent experiences labor. And even in pregnancy, mom's stress impact is shaping the architecture of our baby's brain. And of course, then postpartum mental health. There is growing evidence now that meditation and mindfulness is very helpful in reducing mood disorders in postpartum. And especially if we were looking at data where 1 in 3 women are describing their birth as traumatic, emotional distress is a significant contributor. So what happens when parents have these emotional skills? When have they've learned these in pregnancy, they've been practicing them? There is that increased perception of control. So even if things do take an unexpected turn, those women who can regulate their emotions report higher satisfaction and a sense of agency. Labor usually progresses more smoothly and or improved coping if there are unexpected complications. I posted a birth story there recently on the Gentle Birth website from a mom that had contacted me from Sweden. And she mentioned briefly in her message to me that how much gentle birth had helped her with unexpected changes to her birth. So this mom experienced an 80-hour labor with kind of starting and stopping, not sleeping, and it did end in a cesarean birth. Mom was still breastfeeding. I think the baby was born in early in December or January. Still breastfeeding. Everything is going great, and she is very, very happy with her experience. So initially, when I saw 80 hours, I thought, oh, this might not have ended in a positive way. And meditation and emotional regulation, it is not about positive thinking. So just to kind of put that out there, these are practices to train the brain for emotional regulation under difficult circumstances. But this mom was very happy, like an 80-hour labor that ended in a cesarean. I mean, we've heard those birth stories and we have seen the aftermath of those birth stories as well. They are usually not birth stories that end with a mom writing her birth story saying how amazing it was and how in control she felt the whole time. So I would encourage you to go read the birth story. It really is, I guess, it is the whole package of emotional regulation, really great example of that. Um, then again, we have improved decision making. We know that these babies are going to benefit too. Babies born to mothers who feel calmer and supported during labor tend to have better outcomes. That is, we have more stable heart rates, smoother transitions, easier bonding. Again, maternal stress does affect the fetal heart rate in labor. And then partners also stay engaged. So when moms and partners have shared regulation tools, the support is deeper and more consistent. And then let's look at a postpartum. So for many of us, maybe we're not seeing these families postpartum if we're focused on birth work. But let's look at the impact on mental health and family dynamics. So again, I won't read all through these, but significantly lower stress, fewer depressive symptoms, reduced postpartum blues. This is a really interesting one. Infants whose mothers completed this was a 6 weeks mindfulness program, had their babies had healthier stress responses at 6 months. So that was, they were looking at, they had faster cardiovascular recovery and more self-soothing at 6 months. So we know that these practices during pregnancy are affecting the architecture of these babies' brains and their future stress response. So for me, I think, isn't this incredible that this, childbirth education isn't just affecting one generation of moms, it is affecting the next generation. These babies are developing a much healthier stress response. So my thinking is gentle birth, gentle parents, gentle babies, and that ripple effect then comes out into a more gentle society. And I think today, more than ever, we need emotional regulation skills. 2024, women who participated in prenatal mindfulness relationship-based program reported stronger emotional connection to their babies, both during and after. And then even just kind of coming down to the last one, was higher general and relational mindfulness was associated with greater daily relationship satisfaction in both mothers and partners. And there is quite a growing body of research around mindfulness and relationships. So it is helpful, it is supportive of, partners connecting in that postpartum period, which can feel quite isolating and difficult for new parents. But this helps them, those compassion practices help them see each other from each other's viewpoint as well. And you spend less time with, counting up how many times my partner got up with the baby last night, how many diapers. There's less of that and much more a compassionate understanding that this is a difficult time for both partners, and we bring that level of understanding and compassion to the relationship as well. And then again, focus on specifically compassion training. So there's mindfulness meditation, and then there is compassion training, which is a kind of another aspect to this. It is similar but different. It activates different parts of the brain. It activates the oxytocin system, which is great. So for pregnant women who participated in a 3-week loving kindness and compassion program, showed significantly increased maternal fetal attachment during pregnancy. So again, we're seeing even brief self-compassion practices significantly can improve body image and self-kindness among pregnant and postpartum women. And I think, again, we're so, and so many of our clients are so focused on social media and, what's real in postpartum, what we see on Instagram is very, very different. but developing that self-compassion to have a compassionate relationship and kind relationship with the body that has just done such an amazing thing for us to bring our babies to us. One aspect of what we teach in gentle birth, it's when we talk about that perception of control, it's not about controlling the birth per se. It is when it comes to it, we talk about controlling the controllables. So understanding what is within my control at the moment. So what is within my control? Maybe building my birth team. It may be choosing a certain provider. For some parents, if they live in remote areas, they might have a choice of hospital, and their only hospital local to them is maybe not aligned with that with their birth goals. So understanding that for parents to be able to control what we can control how we respond and how we regulate our emotions in any given state and any given time. But it is not something that is easy to do. It's something that comes with practice, especially if as many women have grown up without a positive idea of what self-compassion actually looks like. And we can find it very difficult to offer ourselves self-compassion because sometimes we may have grown up with the idea that self-compassion is it's letting ourselves off the hook or it's not about being self-critical. It's about is it weakness when we are self-compassionate and just kind to ourselves all the time? But we can see in the evidence that during pregnancy and postpartum, compassion practices are just so essential for mental health and for that adjustment into parenting. So part of what Gentle Birth does is we teach all the great information that you're going to learn out there in a class, all of the traditional information about what happens in labor, the signs and stages, self-advocacy, birth rights, understanding interventions, understanding different pain management options. We cover all of that. But what we have done over the years as Gentle Birth has evolved is we have added more of these brain training aspects to the program itself. So that is meditation, hypnosis, and compassion skills. And then we also have introduced understanding that, pain science and how the brain modulates pain. This was actually part of the research project that we had published last year using that pain education so that parents understand that how the brain modulates pain in different ways and the central nervous system pain management, which is we're using our brain to modulate pain, is one of the most effective and no side effects. So if you're considering teaching gentle birth, so you would teach traditional childbirth education, but you are also adding in these really important components. And then your clients then all of their training is being reinforced, and every day they are getting the daily recommended training based on where they're at in their pregnancy or if they're planning a VBAC. So these tools then they help increase that emotional regulation, flexibility, and resilience. And we know that these are buffers against trauma. So I think for maybe someone watching is a Lamaze teacher, or you're teaching some other program that you are really happy with, but you feel like, yeah, I'm missing out on this aspect, then share the resources about the Gentle Birth app. So then parents can just add that to their preparation, and it tells them every day what they should be practicing, and they learn more about emotional regulation inside the app, in the Gentle Birth book and workbook, so they can do some of those exercises themselves. So I think we're starting to realize, I hope you're starting to realize, that more information just isn't enough. More facts won't help parents if they can't access them during labor. We have to start training parents to develop these emotional regulation skills. We can't just stand there and deliver content knowing what we know, knowing that these practices are so protective for our babies, for moms, for dads, physically, mentally, and relationships after baby is here. So again, if you've walked away from birth thinking there has to be more that we can do, there has to be more, what are we missing? Emotional regulation is what's missing. We have got to re sit down and re-look at how we're teaching childbirth education. We know too much now not to talk to parents about developing these skills for pregnancy and postpartum. So I call it brain training for birth. And as I always say, the double hip squeeze, it is one of the most brilliant tools I was ever taught. But thankfully, working with gentle birth parents, I don't find myself having to do double hip squeeze very often because parents' pain perception is usually quite different when they are emotionally regulated. But the double hip squeeze, as great as it can be to me in labor at 3 a.m. when I'm trying to get my baby to latch on the first day home from hospital, that's not going to be helpful to me because my mind is going to be telling me that my baby doesn't like me or I'm no good as a mom or whatever else nonsense our brain will throw up for us. Having the awareness to know that thoughts are not facts. We don't have to believe everything our brain suggests to us. So that's why I'm always saying, like, what the brain is doing in labor is just as important as what the body and what your baby are doing. But we have left the brain out for way too long. We talk about fight or flight, but that's the height of it. We can change the fight or flight response. We can change women's experiences and babies' experiences by sharing these skills with parents. I think it's time we did it. These are just a couple of the books that I have written or have been involved in. Mindfulness in the Birth Sphere is a fantastic book if you're interested in really taking a deep dive into the science around mindfulness and compassion practices as it relates to birth. But if you're interested in taking instructor training, I'm happy to chat more. Go ahead and jump over to gentlebirth.com. Feel free to email me. But I'll wrap it up there. And again, I apologize for the late start, but I'm happy to answer any questions from anyone that wants to chat more. Any questions, anybody? Carolyn, yeah, let's connect. And if anyone wants to, we're happy to chat offline as well. But I thought it would be good to give you guys an opportunity to pick my brain. Let me and give me scenarios that maybe you've experienced where you might wonder whether emotional regulation skills would have been helpful. But I think you can probably see that again, this is very simple, but it's just practices that we really haven't promoted as part of childbirth education.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey,
Um,
Kash, how are you?
Good. So I feel like this is exactly why I've circled back to gentle birth. I'm currently volunteering at a pregnancy resource center. It kind of started out as a crisis resource center, right? And it's kind of evolved and opened up to the public. But they have this birth prep class, and it's really not preparing them for anything. And there's another young doula who's like, they're not prepared. And then most
No.
recently, I've been referred a mom who is legit being bullied by this OB and the stuff she's being told. I'm sorry, what? And she's like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm panicking when I go talk to this lady. And I'm like, oh man. So I feel like a lot of our parents here are really the odds are really stacked against them, and
Yeah,
they don't even know their rights, much less know how to handle being, in that situation. So,
yeah,
yeah, this really hits home with the compassion and the mindfulness because that's what the center stands for. They really are trying to change the culture, but I don't think they know what they need to do that. Currently, the board is kind of reevaluating their quote bump to baby class, and there's another bill saying we're not preparing them, and even the care coordinator is like they're not prepared for something outside of standard what they're going to get. And I'm like, I know. So I'm like,
yeah,
here I am over here, like, do, I'm going back, and like, yeah,
yeah.
so this is good stuff. And I'm like, can you definitely send us the slides? Or for me, I'd like the slides.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we have a list. Well, I'll send them out to everybody. But it's yeah, and really that was such a good example of again, a lot of, and probably me included, when you go to a medical setting, and not so much anymore, but if you go to a medical setting where you're having testing done or um, that there's always a little bit of nervousness. And I remember seeing there was a study done, I think I probably reposted it a couple of years ago. It's one of those ones that stuck in my mind that when people go for medical testing or they go to talk to their doctor, because they're a little bit anxious, again, that executive functioning is online. Sometimes that takes the memory offline. So you come out of that meeting thinking, God, I can't even remember what they said. I forgot the details. And that's why I would say, yeah, bring a notebook and take notes. But what the study suggested was, before you go into the meeting with your provider, like literally, I think it was like a 5 minute meditation, a 10 minute meditation of, again, grounding yourself, settling yourself. They were able to recall so much more information and have like a discussion that was coming from a place of, okay, I'm grounded. I can ask the questions that are meaningful for me. But that is just 10 minutes before they walk in the door to see their provider. I think that alone for someone who's going in maybe to have a discussion about routine induction could be very helpful. So you don't feel like, because sometimes moms will come out of their prenatal meeting and they feel like, oh, they just scheduled me, they put me in the book, I kind of was blindsided, and that blindsidedness. And if we don't have the skills to, again, emotionally regulate and get that prefrontal cortex back online, then it spirals then into more fear. And that emotional regulation, it helps us, and that awareness helps us notice when we're either about to go off the deep end or we've gone off the deep end, and we come back sooner so we don't spiral. So even catch something very simple of, before you go into your practice, I don't know, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Gentle Birth app is freely available to all Medicaid moms.
I
So
did. Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to follow up on that because I do feel at a disadvantage. I don't quite understand that. When I read Jose's email and I went to that link, it didn't work. I wasn't sure. So I don't, could you follow up on that
I
as far
sure
as how to
will.
do that? Yes. Okay. Because that's
Yeah,
not something me and Jose actually discussed yesterday, was that specific thing. Because yes, some of these moms are wanting access to that, and not all these women like came in and were on Medicaid originally, but times are hard and we're in a very not great
yeah.
state. We're like over 50% federally funded, so it's kind of sad. But the women that come in here are actually really educated too, and they are wanting more, and I'm
Right.
trying to be that, yeah, I guess fill that gap. And
Yeah, well, yeah, that's definitely. We'll connect offline and we'll link in with Jose. I think it was towards the end of last year when it was announced. So, but yeah, let's follow up and we'll connect on that. But yeah, and what's interesting as well, what I like about a lot of the mindfulness research, like that study that was done in San Francisco, where the moms did the 6 weeks mindfulness practice, and then they were able to show at 6 months that had an impact on their baby stress response. These were vulnerable moms, low income moms. So a lot of the research that was done initially on mindfulness and pregnancy, it was done with groups that really need this even more,
right.
that are not getting unbiased, safe care in many cases. So to be able to, again, it's about not tuning out, not going off to, imagining being on a nice beach. That's part of the hypnosis part of it. With meditation, you're tuning in. So for me, I really feel like the development of these very simple but so effective skills will help more moms tune into their own inner wisdom, their own voice. So if they're getting information or somebody is speaking to them in a way that doesn't feel right, they will be clued into that so much more quickly, and not just dismiss it as, oh, I'm overthinking it. Or so I think it gives moms more access to their own wisdom as well, because we're shutting out a lot of the noise, really, and helping mom to go within in a way that is a kind of structured practice that she can do regularly to build. Because we're as we use these skills more, we are literally building out different parts of real estate within the brain. Those parts of the brain that are associated with positive mood grow. The amygdala, part of that fight or flight response, that gets smaller. So, and I'm sure some of you have heard me joke about, when when you're preparing for birth and you're doing all this birth prep, I want you to have a skinny amygdala. Well, we've got two amygdalae. So, but I want them to be skinny because a skinny amygdala has not been used very much because you've been emotionally regulated so much. A big fat amygdala is amygdala that is full of fear, and that's not going to be helpful for us on the big day.
I like that.
Skinny, I'm all about the body positive, but that's a one part of the brain. I want that one part of the body. I want to be skinny. That needs to be we want a nice skinny amygdala because it hasn't been used. We haven't got lots of blood flow to that because mom has just been so well emotionally regulated. And if she starts to practice on the little things in early pregnancy, I mean, ideally we would be teaching these skills to school age kids because, who else needs a little bit of emotional regulation than toddlers? Let's start teaching young so that these are skills that are available to us throughout our lives, because with emotional regulation skills being, they help us in times of stress. We're going to have many more stressful times in our lives. We are going to have unexpected events that will come up, maybe an ill parent, or caring for aging parents, or divorce, or job loss. So I think, like, we're not just antenatal educators or childbirth educators. We are giving these parents, not giving them, we're helping them develop these skills that they will lean on for the rest of their lives in other really difficult circumstances. And they are healthy skills and nurturing. And it just means that we have something to lean on, and not the alcohol, or not the, shopping on Amazon every day, or whatever that distraction is from difficult emotions. We have skills that we can meet these emotions with kindness, meet our circumstances with kindness, and with no judgment. And I think that would be such a gift to give to new parents,
Hey,
in
so
my opinion.
me again. I'm like, I have a question.
Go
So
ahead.
with all of this, we talked about the like populations that you reach. How do you help the people that have some religious blinders up? I'm in a lot of religious organizations, and
Sure.
there's some Christian doulas that really like that something stops them from hearing past that. It sounds like new age, science, woo woo, and then it doesn't help that some of the parenting resources, when they put the videos on and they show like mindfulness or meditation, it's always like the image that you don't really want to be showing folks because it's connected with other, I guess, religions and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So they
I
go
think,
down these witchcraft roads, and I'm like, y'all, calm down. We're not summoning demons. So how do you reach that population? Because I'm connected in a lot of like homeschool and Christian organizations and at risk people, and I'm like I'm happy to connect with all of them, but that part right there I struggle with, like trying to connect the science with the scripture. I talk to Shelly Knight a lot. She does help mentor me with that. She's like, it lines with scripture, Kasha. I'm like, I know, but how do I explain that to them in a way that they will receive it?
yeah, that's a great question, because I tend not to see as much pushback around the meditation aspect to it than I do about the hypnosis.
Okay,
And
yeah,
for those parents who have difficulty with it, and I don't want to be disingenuous or trick somebody into hypnosis. I want them to understand what it is and what it isn't, and it is, no, we don't consider it witchcraft, or but I know some people have very strong feelings around it. So if they feel really uncomfortable with that, I would say, well, I wouldn't, not, that may not be a tool that you should use if you
right.
don't
It's
find
just
it
another
helpful.
tool. Yeah,
Yeah, but I do think, for meditation, I've worked with clients who have very strong particular faith, and yeah, didn't and found the meditation, especially because of some of the imagery around Buddhism and yeah, is this, a false god or, whatever that was for them. But once I was able to kind of have a conversation with them about where these practices are, this is not what we're teaching is not specifically a Buddhist practice. This is a way of training your brain and showing, really kind of looking at the evidence and showing that this is not just good for your brain, this is so good for your baby's brain as well. And a lot of these moms will have it's almost a meditative practice that is part of their, prayer is their meditation. So I would say, please,
To remind them of that, yes.
yeah, that is, I mean, what greater tool could you have than your faith? So I
Mhm.
would say there's definitely, I think Childbirth is so flexible that, you bring your tools, bring your faith as well. And because I think there is great information, and even the practice, the breathing practices, checking in with babies' movements. I think they'll find that there is a lot more that it will actually resonate with their faith than they are, I guess, expecting, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, let's chat more offline about this, because I definitely see, I think there is, yeah, I think there, parents, I would say, yeah, prayer is hugely powerful. And if that is your practice, and when you find, you have difficulties that, I've had, moms that have brought in, they have a particular saint that they find is very special in their lives, and they'll bring little, icons. And so I think we can make that birth space a faith-filled space as well. It's about, again, it's that psychological flexibility to add little pieces, take pieces away, to make this a program that they feel that they can be aligned with as well, that is aligned with their faith mostly.
Yeah, and isn't some of the research when they look at meditation and prayer, like when they do brain scans, don't they use it like interchangeably? And or they discuss that in like side by side? There is research that looks at it, and I try to tell them, I'm like, there's a brain research out there for your
Yeah.
prayer, your meditation, what it does. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Taryn, did you have any questions? Anything I can answer for you today? Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Taryn, if you want to reach out and message anytime, happy to connect. I hope that was helpful. Kasia, let's connect the next couple of days. And otherwise, everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend. I hope that was helpful.
All right. Thanks, Tracy.
Take care. Talk to you soon, Kasia.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.
Tracy,
Yeah,
we are planning to send some information. I will send it to you on the Slack channel for you to take a look before.
yeah, sounds good.
Perfect. Have a
All
great
right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.